Hey friends, welcome back to the Holy Comforter Episcopal Church YouTube Bible study. I've been out for a couple weeks, as you all know, and it's good to be back. So we are getting ready to celebrate the day of Pentecost, one of the great feast days in the Episcopal Church. The day of Pentecost is, of course, 50 days after Easter. Pentagon, 50. It's a big day for us here at Holy Comforter because this is the feast day for our parish, Holy Comforter as in Holy Spirit. And so our church is named for the Holy Spirit. And so this is our big feast day. We're having all the fun and games for the kids. Food truck is coming. And we are actually signing a steel beam that will go into our new church. So it's a big day for us. But we're going to look at Acts chapter 2. Verses 1 through 21. Acts 2, 1 through 21. When the day of Pentecost had come, they were all together in one place. And suddenly from heaven there came a sound like the rush of a violent wind, and it filled the entire house where they were sitting. Divided tongues as of fire appeared among them, and a tongue rested on each of them. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other languages as the Spirit gave them ability. Now, there were devout Jews from every nation living under heaven, living in Jerusalem. And at the sound the crowd gathered and was bewildered, because each one heard them speaking in the native language of each. Amazed and astonished, they asked, "Are not all of these who are speaking Galileans? And how is it that we hear, each of us, in our own native language? Parthians, Medes, Elamites, and residents of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt and the parts of Libya belonging to Cyrene, and visitors from Rome, both Jews and proselytes, Cretans and Arabs, in our own languages, we hear them speaking about God's deeds of power." All were amazed and perplexed, saying to one another, "What does this mean?" But others sneered and said, "They are filled with new wine." But Peter, standing with the 11, raised his voice and addressed them, "Men of Judea and all who live in Jerusalem, let this be known to you, and listen to what I say. Indeed, these are not drunk as you suppose, for it is only 9 o'clock in the morning. No, this is what was spoken through the prophet Joel. In the last days it will be, God declares, that I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Even upon my slaves, both men and women. In those days I will pour out my Spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will show portents in the heaven above, and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and smoky mist. The sun shall be turned to darkness, and the moon to blood, before the coming of the Lord's great and glorious day. Then everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved." So just let's start with that second part. When Peter begins his sermon, that's a long passage from the prophet Joel. And I think what Peter is getting at is, hey, remember how Joel was talking about that day of the Lord when the Holy Spirit would come upon all of God's people? This is what we're seeing right now. This is the day of the Lord. Now is the hour of your salvation, as Paul would say. The Spirit is being poured out upon them in this precise moment. And so this is the fulfillment of everything we've been waiting for. There's also a sense of the radical nature of this gospel, of this good news of the Holy Spirit, that the old lines, the old national lines, don't matter anymore. Or maybe that they matter, but that they are, I don't know. It's funny. Here it is Pentecost when the disciples are given the power of speech, and yet this passage kind of makes me speechless. I think it's the reminder that the definitions that we have placed on ourselves are not nearly as important as the definition that God gives us, that we are God's beloved children inspired by the Holy Spirit. So I think that's important for us to remember, that all of these people, Jews from every nation, that all those national identities, they're still there, but now there's something more. So I want you to think about that in our time, in our common life here. There seems to be There has always seemed to be a part of the American culture that is very much afraid of the other, that is very xenophobic, that is very nationalist and nativistic. And I think what Pentecost is calling us to remember is that the true definition of who we are is God's children. And sure, there are other definitions, but those are never our primary definitions. So I ask you to think about that this week. How has God defined you? Who are you in God's family? And maybe this is an opportunity and an invitation to stop thinking about other people according to those secular worldly definitions, but to think of all of us as God's beloved children. Well, I thank you for joining me for this brief reflection on a very powerful message, not only for 2,000 years ago, but for today as well.